Very good. Looks like we're good to go. So yes, thank you for being here. Thanks for spending your Cinco de Mayo with us. You could have been anywhere else and you chose to be here. So the goal that I'm hoping to accomplish this evening is to give you guys some really practical strategies to enhance your movement and to help you see that what this slide says is true, that all of the strength, speed, and suppleness you need, you already have. You just need to release it. Many of us move in ways, posture ourselves in ways, exercise in ways, and just go through day-to-day life moving in ways where we're inhibited. And what I mean by that is we're not accessing the strength that we have that's inherent to our system and inherent to our structure. So a lot of us exercise to try to make up for that, thinking that we're weak, but we're actually not moving in the ways that are going to maximize that anyway. So hopefully when we're done with this class, you guys will be able to apply these strategies immediately and send me feedback. Let me know if you have further questions. So as I stated, the reason we're here on this Wednesday evening is to discuss the ways that most people do not move efficiently. And that's why they eventually find their way to us or a chiropractor, an acupuncturist, or somebody. And how if we learn to enhance our movement by enhancing the way that we move, which is our mechanical capacity, the way that we activate our muscles, which is our neuromuscular control, and then the way that we habit our movements, which is our motor control. If we can enhance movement in those three pillars and in those three ways, we're going to reduce the risk of injury, we're going to increase our performance, we're going to live a more resilient life. So as we go through this lecture, the emphasis is going to be on the motor control and the movement habits. But just to get into a little bit more detail here briefly, when we talk about mechanical capacity being a problem, what we're referring to is the amount of movement available. For instance, if I'm going to do a squat, I'll be moving around. We'll be going back and forth to videos. But if I squat down, and I know I'm kind of going out of the screen a little bit, the depth of my squat will be dictated by the mobility that I have in my hips. And my ability to maintain a neutral position of my spine will be dictated by how well I'm able to actually move through those hips so that my spine can do what it's supposed to do, which is just transfer force through my system, as opposed to bending and twisting and flexing and extending and trying to generate force to make up for a lack of mobility of my hips. So mechanical capacity is critical for efficient movement and to primarily what we will be discussing through the class to preserve the health of our spine by using the bigger joints like our knees, our hips, our ankles, our shoulders. When we talk about neuromuscular control, the question is, are we firing the right muscles at the right time? And it's not one muscle. Like when I do this and I fire my bicep, I'm actually firing my forearm, my bicep, my pec major, pec minor, coracobrachialis. There's a lot of muscles in that chain. But am I able to recruit those muscles in a pattern that is efficient? Or am I doing so in a way that is improper timing, or various muscles in that chain are not pulling their weight, so to speak? So getting the right muscles to fire at the right time is critical. And that is based on our alignment and our movement mechanics. And that's what we'll get more into. Motor control is our movement strategies and habits. I can have good mechanical capacity. I can have good neuromuscular control. However, I can still move in a way that is inefficient. I can bend down and pick something up like this repeatedly instead of using the mobility in my hips, in my knees to pick that object up off of the ground. And so the emphasis again of this class is going to be looking at your movement habits and how enhancing the mechanical, or by utilizing the mechanical capacity and the neuromuscular control that you do have, you can maximize that through good motor control and build up through optimal movement, better neuromuscular control, better mechanical capacity. So that's where we'll head. We'll start by briefly discussing the core. And when we talk about the core, it's the best analogy that I can give, and it's not my own, but I use it all the time, is to a Coke can. The top of the can being the diaphragm, the bottom being the muscles of the pelvic floor, and then the cylinder being the muscles three-dimensionally around, all right? The Coke can is a stable structure and it's hard to crush. If you've ever tried to step on a full Coke can, it's very challenging. I don't think anybody could actually squish it. And the reason is that is able to withstand an incredible amount of pressure within an enclosed system. So our stability of our spine is actually, let's say it this way, our spine is more stable if it can generate and withstand a higher degree of pressure. That pressure is created by our muscles, and it's created by the diaphragm pushing down in opposition to the pelvic floor and the muscles around, creating pressure to sort of squeeze that cylinder, which helps to stabilize the spine. Now, if our core muscles are weaker, if we're aligned in an improper way, those muscles are not going to be able to contract as well. Therefore, we will not create as much pressure to stabilize the spine, and we will be weaker, or our core will be more inhibited. Now, that pressure is a good thing and a bad thing. We need that pressure to stabilize our spine, but if there's a spine injury, like an injury to our lumbar disc, that increase in pressure can actually really hurt. That's why those of you that, like when you cough and sneeze, when you've got an injury to your low back, it can really hurt. That's because those muscles, when you cough and sneeze, they create that pressure, which is actually a form of core stability. And if there's an injury, it can be a bit problematic, and that's where the rehabilitation comes in. But in the optimal state, that ability to withstand, generate, and reinforce pressure is what dictates to efficient core. Now, if you take the Coke can and you pop the lid, you've decreased pressure, and immediately you will make it easier to squish that Coke can. If you pour out the contents, less pressure again, you can squish that Coke can rather easily. If you put a hinge in that Coke can, now not only is there a limited amount of pressure, but you've also got a weak point and a stress point in that Coke can. In that case, you can crush that Coke can immediately with minimal pressure, because it is not only a decreased amount of pressure to stabilize it, but you've got a mechanical stress point that leads to an ability to not transfer force through the system. It gets absorbed through that Coke can. So how we position ourselves in space determines how the force transfers through our system. You can see with these blocks here, many people stand in ways, and we're going to go through this and we're going to practice this on ourselves, where the alignment of our thoracic cage to our pelvis, to our legs, and our head and neck are not optimally aligned vertically. In the picture on the right, you'll see a vertical alignment, and you can imagine if you press through the top of that head block, if you were to compress that system, the weight would go straight through the system. But if you were to compress the system on the left, you would see how it would exaggerate the bad positioning of the blocks. And again, you'll feel this on yourself. Now, if you were to push back, or like say someone was standing in front of the picture of me on the left and they pushed into my shoulders, they're going to have a much easier time pushing me back than if they pushed into the version of me standing on the right-hand side of the screen, where my posture is more aligned, where the blocks of my major body regions are aligned vertically. So force transfer is enhanced through a system that is vertically aligned, and core stability is enhanced through a posture where the blocks are vertically aligned, because I'm going to have access to the muscles of my core when a demand like someone pushing into my shoulders occurs. The version of me on the left that is backward bent a little bit, if you push on my shoulders, I'm going to have a harder time not falling back. But I'm also going to have a harder time taking a deep breath with my diaphragm. And I'll have you feel this on yourselves in a minute too. Because I've extended and opened up the front of my system, it's going to be harder for me to maximize a diaphragmatic breath that would entail a relaxation of my stomach. So I want you to understand so far, just as I've outlined, like what the core is, and the core is, the strength of it is again determined by pressure regulation, and that pressure is maximized in a system that is vertically aligned. So I'm going to go to a new screen share here. Bear with me. We're going to play a quick video, and I'm going to go back and forth between a few videos so that you can see, and bear with me here. All right. All right, here's a quick look at standing posture and some of the major faults we see, as well as the major cues we use to correct it. Most people stand with the weight in their heels, their knees locked out, hips forward, shoulders rounded forward, but ribcage angled back. That puts the head at a forward angle. Okay, they may posture themselves up, or they may kind of sink down and fall into a slouched position. The first cue we use is to get weight equal between big toe, little toe, and heel. so that the weight's centered in the foot. Knees are now soft, not locked out. Softening the knees helps the pelvis to neutralize here, but we've got to make sure that that rib cage is over the middle of the pelvis and not hanging back like this. Once you've positioned yourself in a vertical alignment, imagine someone pushing through my shoulders. There should be no buckle in my spine, whereas if I was here, there would be. Once I'm vertically aligned, I can open my shoulders and I can align my head on top so that I'm in a comfortable, neutral, athletic position. All right. So what I want you to do is stand up, and you can watch, but you're going to get a lot more out of this if you actually stand and participate. So hopefully you can see me okay here. And if I just for a moment, I'll stop sharing and just forgive all the back and forth that there's going to be related to sharing different things, but hopefully you can see me now, more of my body in the screen. What I'd like you to do is, first of all, on yourself, as you stand, get a sense of where the weight is in your feet. Most people tend to stand with the weight back in the heels. Is your weight more in the heels, or is it equal between the heels and the forefoot? Do you tend to lock out your knees, or are your knees soft? As you stand, do you feel like you're somewhat leaning back, or are you forward in that position that is more of an athletic position, as if you would run in place? Okay. If someone were to load through your shoulders, do you feel like that weight would go straight down into your feet? Or if you're standing back like this, do you feel like it would put a little pressure into that hinge in your Coke can right here? All right, so let's feel these postures together, and then you'll have a better sense of where you are, and we can look at that correction. And at the end, I have these slides. They don't get into too much depth, but you can email us and we can send you the slides for further reinforcement. But take your hands across your chest, and what I want you to do is put the weight in your heels, lock out your knees, and kind of lean back a little bit. All right. Now, as you lean back, feel how you can be leaning back with your chest lifted up, or you can be leaning back with your chest kind of falling down into a slouched position. Many people posture themselves up like this. So it's that performance posture. Okay, so in that posture, try to take a deep breath into your stomach. Really hard to do, right? It makes it a shallow breath. So what do people have to do? They have to breathe using their neck, using their shoulders. Now, take that posture and bring it forward so that the weight's in the middle of the feet, the knees are soft, and that rib cage is vertically aligned. You'll feel like you're a little falling forward at first, but try to take a deep breath here into your stomach. You should feel like you can get much more of an expansion of that diaphragm downward, which is an optimal breath, as opposed to when you're here and the tension through your stomach doesn't allow for that efficient breath to occur. Now, go back to where you're sort of leaning back and your rib cage is behind the pelvis, and just imagine someone pushing down on your shoulders, and then bring your weight forward so that the weight's in the middle of the feet, knees are soft, pelvis is aligned more vertically, and your ribs are over the front part of your body. And imagine now someone putting weight through your shoulders. You should feel when you're forward like you're a bit springy. You could step without having to come forward to do so. Whereas if you're leaning back like this, if you had to move forward, the first thing you would need to do would be to come forward to be able to go. So hopefully you can feel some of those things on yourself. This slide here just outlines the major cues that I give to the majority of people. It's very basic when you're looking at how you should stand in a more optimal way. I'm talking about standing posture. I'm going to talk about sitting posture. Then we're going to go from sitting to standing. We're going to do a squat. We're going to do a deadlift. We're going to do a lot of different things. But I want you to understand how you align yourself in each of these ways. So the feet should be hip width apart, equal weight bearing between the front and back of feet. The knees should not be hyperextended. Your pelvis should be vertical. That belt line should not be tipped forward or excessively tipped back, somewhere right in the middle. And then again, those ribs should be aligned straight down, not with a backward lean. Once you've corrected the body, that head and neck, you can simply nod yes, shoulders up, open, and down. Another good way to feel how alignment really matters on yourself, and I'd like you to do this as well if you can find a wall space, is place your hands on the wall and put yourself in a stride position. If you push into the wall, feel how that weight does or does not transfer through your core into that back leg. While you're pushing into the wall, and you should feel that back leg engage, I want you to lift your ribs a bit and lower your ribs a bit, and feel how if your ribs, there's a sweet spot where if you're not too lifted and not too rounded, but somewhere in the middle, you'll have the best connection and drive between the back leg and your hands. That means that you're generating force from your base. You're able to transfer that weight through your spine and into your hands. And if you're a runner, this is the position that you should be running in. If you're a lineman in football, you need to be in that position that you're forward angulated, because if you're the picture of me on the left and you're an offensive lineman, it's going to be a long day for your quarterback. If you're just walking, trying to get your 10,000 steps a day, and you're walking in a way where you're aligned like the me on the left, notice the hinge in my Coke can in my low back. Those of you that walk and you get back pain with walking, many times we see people just walking where they're just kind of lollygagging around, leaning back, walking from their legs, not engaging their core, and putting too much stress in that lower lumbar region. So hopefully you felt that connection between your foot and your core. So now if you were standing, I'd like you to find a seat if you have a seat. And I'm going to run a quick, actually we'll do this exercise and then I'll run a quick video. So on your seat, I don't want you against the backrest. I want you to come forward in the seat. And I want you to just notice how you sit when you're not using a backrest. Okay, there's again, everywhere that I'm going to try to position you tonight is the sweet spot between not too slouched, because a lot of you will end up here. A lot of us, me too, at times I'll just kind of fall back here, or tend to hold myself up from my low back. So after an extended period of time, things start feeling really tight back here. All right, neither of these is efficient, because here I'm just hanging passively on the ligaments of my low back, and here I'm over efforting from the muscles. So how we align ourselves in standing or sitting matters, but it's dependent, it's made easier or harder based on the base that we're aligning ourselves over. So in standing, I talked about equal weight between big toe, little toe, heel, middle of the foot. In sitting, I want you to feel that weight on the pelvic floor, the front edge of your sit bones, and the back edge of the pubic symphysis bone, not back on your sit bones themselves. If you're in a very soft chair, this might be hard to feel. The harder the surface, the more you'll feel like the contact of your sit bones into the surface. But do your best to follow along with me here. I want you to go ahead and slouch and sit up tall and explore the range of motion that you have. How much can you slouch? How much can you sit up tall? Then find a comfortable middle position. All right. That comfortable middle position is an alignment that doesn't feel like you're too slouched or too tall, like you're holding yourself up too much. Now, notice where you're weight bearing on your pelvis, back to front. And I want you to just relax everything and see what happens. And again, like if I'm doing this in person or with a client, most of the time people are gonna slouch. Demonstrating that even though they align themselves well, because they're on the back of the pelvis, which is two round bones, when you relax your muscles, you're gonna fall down off the contour of those bones. But if you align yourself just right, so go ahead and slouch and sit up tall and find that comfortable middle position. This time, hinge forward from the hips slightly until you feel the weight on the back edge or the front edge of the sit bones and the back edge of the pelvic bone over the fleshy part of the pelvis. That's where you should be weight bearing. That's your pelvic floor. Those are all the muscles that are forming the stability of the base of your Coke can. Now, if you're over that pelvic floor at a slight forward lean and you relax everything, sometimes people will kind of settle a little, and that can be related to some weaknesses through the core or the mid back. But more often than not, you'll feel like you don't actually slouch, because to slouch, you have to come up and over the front edge of those sit bones. Now you're on the round part of the bones and you fall back. Okay, so in order to maintain your alignment in relationship to gravity as effectively as possible with minimal effort, it's important to align yourself over a stable base. And again, that base in sitting is the pelvic floor, and in standing, it's the middle of the foot. Now, how is this important to accessing your strength? And I don't know why you signed up for the class or what you're thinking at this point, but it's a building block. And if I sit like this and I'm over my pelvic floor and I'm working, no matter what I'm doing, and I'm breathing in a way that's accessing my diaphragm and working on the diaphragm pelvic floor connection, I am firing my core nonstop. Okay, that's going to help me as I go out through the rest of my day and I go for a walk or I go for a run or I work out or I play with my kids, no matter what I do. Whereas if I'm sitting like this all day, inhibiting my core, when I get up to go for a run, play with my kids, no matter what I'm doing, I've spent the last chunk of hours becoming inhibited. And I love the saying that one of my colleagues used, the body is cement waiting to harden. I've just kind of folded myself into this mold. And then when I get up, I mean, why am I not just going to stand like that? And when I go to move, how am I going to move in a way where I'm not just maintaining that inhibition? So I want you to posture yourself in ways throughout the day that adds to your strength and doesn't make it so that you're one of those people that exercises to compensate for the fact that you posture yourself poorly throughout the rest of the day. Let's let that exercise take us to the next level and not just keep us where we're at. All right. New share. Here's another video, I think. All right, go ahead and slouch and sit up tall and find that comfortable alignment for your spine that's not too slouched, not too tall, just right. From that position, hinge the weight forward so that the weight's on the front edge of your sit bones. If it's on the back edge of the sit bones, you're gonna have to effort from your spine. When you get to the front edge of the sit bones and the back of the front of the pelvis, it's a broader base. You should be able to relax the stomach and feel like you're anchored on the front edge of those sit bones. From there, nod the head yes to be in a slightly chin down position. You can open your shoulders to have that shoulder alignment appropriate. And as an added support, slide one leg behind to help keep you anchored forward. Now you're in an athletic, unsupported sitting position. All right, so hopefully following along there gives you a little bit more feedback. And if we want to feel this one more time on ourselves, go back to, if you moved, go back to where you're sitting towards the front edge of the seat, slouch down, sit up tall. Okay, bring your weight forward and settle down with regards to the rib cage, or slouch, sit up tall, find a comfortable middle position, roll forward onto the front edge of those sit bones, nod your head yes to be in a comfortable position for your neck, shrug your shoulders up, rotate your palms forward, lower down, and then one leg can slide behind and use the tension of that front leg to help anchor you forward. So you're working here in an athletic position. Again, if I'm sitting here and I got to run for something, I'm already in a position to do so. I'm sitting in as athletic a position as I can, versus if I'm sitting here and I got to get up, I go through all this added effort through my spine that is unnecessary and over time detrimental. All right. So let's talk about weight shift and weight acceptance. These are concepts that relate to all efficient movement. Weight acceptance being the exaggerated use of your base of support, whether it's in the picture here, you can see me moving, maintaining a neutral spine. As I move from sitting to standing, I'm transferring the weight from my pelvis to my feet. So as I start to load my feet, I need to really push my feet down into the surface to engage that load, while maintaining a neutral spine to make sure that I'm at least initiating and driving the work from my legs, not from my back. And I'll show you some inefficient ways of doing that. I'm going to play another video that demonstrates that. So really pay attention to this, because we're going to go to feeling this on ourselves next and building off of this the rest of the evening. All right, go ahead and slouch and sit up tall. And find that comfortable alignment for your spine that's not too slouched, not too... That's not right. Hang on. Where is it? All right, from this position, if you're going to reach for something or if you're going to come to standing, all the motion should take place at the hip. And all of the effort, we should emphasize and exaggerate, mostly from this front leg. Back leg can help a little bit. So you're going to hinge forward from the hip. As soon as you start hinging forward from the hip, this foot's pushing down hard. All right, no motion happening at the spine. We don't want to be here. We don't want to exaggerate the effort from the back. The back's just going along for the ride as we engage that foot into the floor. You can use something like a stick or a golf club to exaggerate and maintain that neutral position of your spine. But the real concept here is engaging that foot into the floor so that as soon as I start hinging forward, whether I'm reaching or coming to standing, I've transitioned all the weight to where it's in my legs and I can drive up. All right. So I want all of us to practice this because this, and someone asked if this recording is going to be available afterwards. Yeah, it'll be on our YouTube station. And then again, we can send people the slides. If you're interested, just email us. But when I talk about alignment and base of support, those concepts can be utilized whether you're just sitting or standing. They're static concepts. When we talk about weight shift and weight acceptance, we're getting into really how we move appropriately. So as I outlined in the video, optimal like sit to stand, really accepting weight into our legs, that's a foundational movement as we get into things like lunging, squatting, picking things up, all that. And that's what we're going to get into the rest of the course. But come to the front of your seat again. And first and foremost, find that comfortable neutral position. And I want you sitting started over your pelvic floor. Let's give ourselves the foot sliding back, little kickstand. All right. And what I'd like you to start to feel on yourself is as I start to come forward, first of all, how far forward do I need to go in order to be able to stand without any further forward motion? That might be confusing, but let me demonstrate a few examples like I did in the video. I want to delineate where momentum is coming from when I'm working with someone on these movement mechanics. So many people, when I say shift as far forward as you can, so that you don't need to go any further forward to come to standing, they'll do something like this. They'll stop here. They'll say, okay, I'm there. And I'll say, stand up. And they'll go, okay. So were they really far enough forward with all the weight in their new base of support? The answer is no. So what did they do? Instead of just driving down from the feet to stand, they momentumed from the, is that a word? I don't know, but they momentum from their low back to go from a quick flexion extension to use that momentum to come to standing. Now that's the last thing that we want to do over and over and over again, because these are little joints. They're not as big as the hip. They shouldn't be active, or they shouldn't be initiating the motion. They should be continuing and transferring the motion. All right. So I'll take them through and I'll bring them forward, 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 forward. I'll keep bringing them forward. And I want you and I want them to get as far forward as they can so that we could remove the chair, and that tells me that the weight was all the way in their feet before they started to stand up. Now, they can then use, I don't care if they use momentum in the right places. So once I know they're moving from their hips and not from their spine, then it can go a little quicker, but it's from that hip hinge driving the feet down. All right. So understanding that full weight acceptance and that full transfer of energy from the base of support, which was the pelvis, to the new base of support, which is the foot, is critical. Now, how you engage that is equally critical. This is something you need to feel, but I can convey this to you and you can practice, you can feel it on yourself. I want you to come far enough forward to that place where the weight is in the feet and you feel like you don't have to come further forward. Now, don't actually stand, but start pushing your feet into the ground and feel how you've sort of exaggeratingly engaged your legs before you've actually gone through any motion, and feel how that should offload the spine. Now, don't stand, just keep pushing through those feet to sort of leg press yourself back upright into sitting. Anytime your weight or your alignment starts to move beyond your base of support, and you have something out there like a hand or a foot to engage against that, you need to be engaging that new base of support. So whether your feet are side by side or if they're staggered, as soon as I start hinging forward, whether I'm reaching for something or whether I'm coming to standing, as soon as I start moving forward, my foot should be pushing into the ground as if I could push the ground down a half an inch. All right, so I'm anticipating that transfer. I'm engaging my new base of support, and then I'm able to drive from that base of support without having to effort from my spine. If you have back pain, you should still feel a difference by engaging the feet down into the ground as you shift forward. But one thing I might suggest is rest your hands on your knees like this and kind of wiggle your back. You should feel like the arms are offloading the weight of the spine. So if you have a little bit of discomfort, or if you feel like you're just guarding a lot from the back, you can kind of relax there. Now, start pushing your feet down. And as you engage your legs, practice taking the hands off of the legs. We'll do this later in a squat position. But what you're doing is you're transferring responsibility for supporting the spine from the arms to the legs. And then you can stand up from there in a way that engages just the legs. So hopefully you felt that as I've been talking, you've been trying it a few times on yourself, feeling that as you hinge forward, really pushing the foot down into the floor. Now I'll take pictures of people before and after I train them in this concept. And usually the before picture looks something like this. And the after picture looks something like this. All right. So it's not just how they engage their legs to drive from the legs, it's how they maintain their alignment of their spine to not flex the spine. So if you're one of those people that feels like you're doing this, and really what happens here is the pelvis and the hip isn't actually moving, you're just folding from the spine. But I want you to roll the pelvis off the seat like you're peeling tape off of the seat. If your hand was under your butt, as you slide forward, it just kind of progresses forward. So you can put a stick along your back like this, help maintain that verticality of your spine. Opposite hand can thread through the natural lordosis, that space in the low back. And what you should feel is you should be able to hinge forward without that space diminishing or without the stick coming off the lower back or the upper back. It should just give you that feedback to maintain neutral spine, move just from the hips here, and then drive through those legs to come to standing. So the ability to hinge forward from the hips is weight shifting from your pelvis to your feet. The ability to exaggeratedly engage your legs in a way that takes pressure off of your spine is that concept of weight acceptance. Meaning, if you don't accept the weight with your legs, you're going to accept it with your spine. You're going to hold yourself up from your back instead of trusting your legs to push down into the floor. All right, same concept in standing. I got 2 more videos. Let's look at this one. All right, let's look at forward weight shift and how we accept the weight with our legs and standing. So once we've aligned ourselves in that athletic position, if we put one foot in front of the other, I want you to experience pushing through one foot to load the opposite foot. So I drive from my back foot to load my front foot. I don't lean forward with my hips or round with my shoulders. It's just passing your weight back and forth between your feet. To get an exaggerated sense of this, you could go onto a step, and I want you to be able to push through your back leg to fully load that front leg to the point that this leg's really engaging the step, and you can unload that trail leg without any change in your system, and then come up to neutral here. Most people, when they do this the first time, they get to about here, and then when they unload, they have to, because they didn't fully engage and load that front leg. All right, so you'll notice, like, as we get into some of this training standing, it's moving slow before you can move fast. If you can't do something slowly, you're not going to do it correctly fast. You're just going to use compensations. So again, we want to train the proper mechanics, do it repetitively to instill good motor patterns, and then we can pick up the speed and pick up the pace. The importance of understanding weight shift, weight acceptance, and standing refers to anything from like picking up a golf ball out of the hole, to picking up a pencil off the ground, to climbing steps, to hiking uphill, you name it. And we're going to get into functional squats and other applications of this. But again, here I'd like you to come to standing, and I've set up a step back here so that I can demonstrate that step in a couple different angles. But before we do that, what I'd like you to do is just stand in a staggered stance. Come back to the standing alignment that we looked at earlier, which was, do you tend to lean back? And let's start with the weight mostly in the back leg. Do you tend to have the weight more in the heel of the back leg or in the middle of the back leg? Start with the weight equal between your back leg, big toe, little toe, and heel. Okay, is that knee soft or is it locked out? Don't let it be hyperextended, let it be soft. Pelvis is relaxed. And then with your rib cage, like if you put a hand on your stomach and a hand on your chest, or the lower part of your chest, right at your lower part of your breastbone, those should be aligned essentially vertically, okay? If this top hand is leaning back in an angle like this, your rib cage is behind your stomach, okay? So start here. Now, practice just pushing through that back leg to load the front leg. The only thing moving here, well, there's two things. In my case, my right foot, it's my back foot. I'm pushing onto the toes of my back foot to load my front foot. As I load my front foot, I'm letting the knees straighten out a little bit. All right, those are the only two things moving. I'm not trying to propel myself forward by extending my rib cage or leaning forward. I'm letting my base of support, my foot, drive my alignment forward. Again, imagine someone's pushing into my shoulders and I'm trying to drive forward against that force. If I'm maintaining my vertical alignment, I'm going to be fine. If I lean back, I'm going to get pushed further into that dysfunctional position, okay? So you should get a sense here of driving from your base, driving from your foot. And then you probably don't have access to a step, but I want to go through one more time the importance of using something like a step to add resistance to this, and then carry that through to how we walk. You can see my belt line, I hope, from behind. As I push up onto the step, the goal that I was showing in the video is I should be able to load that front leg by driving through my back leg and load it enough that I can, just like I push the chair out and maintain my position because I didn't need the chair anymore, I get to a place where I don't even need that back leg anymore and I'm stable and my belt line is stable. And then my lead leg carries me through into that step up. What most people do is they don't fully load that front leg. So then when they go to unload this leg, because the front leg's not fully loaded, there's a drop and then a correction. And that happens over and over again. And it's exaggerated when we step up or when we run, but we also see it when people walk as a hip drop on the opposite side. And you see excessive movement of the pelvis, okay? What's happening there, and you can try this on yourself if you kind of walk around your room right now. Put your hands on the sides of your legs below where your belt would be and just walk forward and see if there's a lot of pressure out into your hands. Are you a person that walks with a lot of lateral movement in your pelvis? If you are, what I want you to do is spend more time on your back foot as you transfer weight into the front foot. And feel how most of the time just doing that is going to decrease the amount of lateral motion that you're experiencing when you walk, because you're giving yourself more time to fully load the front foot to be able to unload effectively, as opposed to trying to unload before you've efficiently loaded that front foot. So we see the breakdown of this much more when we come to, again, big movements like a step up or watching people run, doing lunges, things like that. But it can be noticed and fine-tuned down to walking and other activities like that. So let me know if there's any questions. We're going to get into a few more like exercise applications now. And if there's any questions, I'll come back to that. I'm going to play one more video. And then the rest of the time, we'll really just be going through a few exercises and then answering some questions. So here's a video on squats. Do bodyweight squats, which is a combination of squats and a deadlift to train an exaggerated use of the legs and really shutting off the back, letting it go along for the ride. So start in a position where your forearms are on your legs and your spine's in a comfortable neutral position. You should be able to shake it out, not feel like you're holding yourself up from the spine. Really exaggerate pressing those feet into the ground to activate the legs. And as you do, melt the arms up to your chest. Now your legs are holding your back up, not your arms. As you come to standing, time the knees straightening with the hips straightening. So you pop up into a straight position and a slight forward angulation. Drop back down so those elbows tap the thighs and drive back up. As you continue to squat, make sure that your head is in alignment with your spine and that you're not looking forward, which affects the angle of the spine. And repeat that up and down. All right. So we're going to do this together. Again, come up to standing. And we're going to tie together a lot of what we've already talked about. And we're going to tie it together into squats. And then after we go through the squats, we'll go through a few other things. You can see the picture of on the right. That's my mentor, Vicki Johnson. Everything that we're talking about right now, strategies. Again, it's how we use our base of support, our alignment, and how we optimally use weight shift and weight acceptance to maximize how we use our base and minimize how much extra effort we're applying into our spine. So she's demonstrating like what we're going to do with a functional squat as if we were going to pick something up. There's lots of different ways we can pick it up, and we'll show that in lots of other ways. What I'd like you to do now is come into a position where your hands are down on your knees or your forearms are down on your knees so that you feel like your arms are taking the load of the back and acting as a conduit to unload the back into the legs. I did this in sitting. Now we're doing it without the chair under my pelvis. All right. If you feel like your back's rounded with the elbows on the knees, come up to where the hands are on the knees, because I want your back to be in a comfortable neutral position. You don't have to do this, but you can if you want. The cat-cow pose, or in yoga, the flow, whatever you want to call it. And I never know which is which, if that's the cat or the cow or the camel or what. But if you go between positions here, you're able to control and fine-tune the alignment of your spine, just as we did in sitting, just as we did in standing, but on hands and knees, or in a position like that where your hands are rested on your knees and you can find that comfortable neutral position for your back, or if your forearms are on your knees and because your back's unloaded through the arms, you can fine-tune and find that comfortable position for your back. So join me back in this position and alternate between rounding and straightening the back. Come to where your back feels like it's in a comfortable neutral position. If you have a mirror, you can see from the side and see that your back's nice and straight. What I'd like you to then do is start pushing your feet into the ground as if you could push the ground away. Feel the leg muscles really turn on in an exaggerated way. And as you do, bring the arms up to your chest. So you should still feel like the back is unloaded because now the legs are really working to take the weight, and then come up to standing. Okay, as you come up to standing, a lot of you probably feeling your quads burning, but I want to draw your emphasis to what's happening on the backside. If we're just using our quads and we're not focused on using our glutes, many times we're going to come up out of a squat like this, where we've pushed with our quads to straighten our knees, but we've kind of leaned back with using our back muscles to lift us up, as opposed to maintaining that neutral position of our spine and using our butt, pinching our butt to drive the hips forward. Because you'll notice if I just drive my hips forward from my glutes, I come up to standing into that vertical alignment that if I'm a Coke can, you can't crush me. But if I use my quads and lift from my back, I've got a hinge in my Coke can. You push on me, you can cause a bend here. And again, the problem with that is over time, gravity is pushing on me all day. So if that lower lumbar spine's in a position where it's not transferring force, but it's absorbing force, you're going to break down the segments. All right, so use the big joints, take stress off the little joints. Let's do 2 minutes of squats together. I want you to go back to the starting position, whether it's here or here. I'm going to start with my forearms on my knees. Find that comfortable neutral position for your back. Head and neck relaxed. I want you to start pushing your feet down into the ground. Emphasis on weight between the big toe, little toe, and heel. Don't be looking forward. Head is in alignment with your spine. As you engage the legs, the arms come to your chest. As you stand, focus on pinching your glutes. We're going to go 2 minutes down, up, and I'll keep emphasizing certain points here. As I go down, I'm just keeping my arms like this so that my elbows can tap my thighs and I drive back up. Pace doesn't matter. Maintenance of alignment, the feel of the quad glute connection matters. The timing of the knees straightening and the hips straightening matters. The maintenance of the weight between big toe, little toe, heel matters. The feeling that you're not using your back, that's very important. If at any time through the next minute and a half or so that we're going up and down, you start to feel like you're having pressure in the low back, I want you to pause with the arms on the legs, kind of shake it out, reset your position, engage the feet down into the floor again, melt the arms up, and go through that transition of teaching yourself to unload the back through optimally and exaggeratingly engaging the legs. All right, so we've got about another minute or so, equal weight between big toe, little toe, heel. Some of you do a lot of squats, and you'll notice this is more like a deadlift squat, or we call it a functional squat. But you can start to have your arms as if you were holding like a kettlebell and doing a deadlift, or out a little wider. And imagine you were doing a barbell deadlift, or if you had like a kettlebell and you were doing a swing. No matter what you're doing, this is the fundamental aspect and movement pattern. Because I see people, I saw someone earlier today doing like a kettlebell swing, and they extend from their back instead of just locking out at the pelvis and letting their core remain engaged. Because the purpose of the kettlebell is not to lift from the arms, go ahead and relax, but you should almost feel like your arms are decelerating the kettlebell through that activation of your core, and the legs are generating all of the force, okay? So that's a bodyweight squat. I teach this to, almost every patient that has an issue in the lower body, at least with their back, their hip, their knee, their foot. And it ties together the concepts of understanding alignment, understanding driving from the legs, and then maintaining that through a functional task. The timing of it, doing 2 minutes, should feel like nothing. I'm out of breath because I'm talking, and I'm a little out of shape, to be honest, but as you go and do this, you should be able to go for 3, 4, or 5 minutes, and just the repetition of it helps to reinstate the optimal alignment so that when you go to do something in real life and just pick something up, you don't revert back to old habits. You started to gain some new habits and smooth out the rough edges of your previous habits. All right, so that's a good example of weight acceptance in a functional way. We're going to go to doing like a hands and knees position, bird dog to a push-up position, and a couple other things. And then I'm going to open up the last couple minutes and just see if there's any questions or anyone wants to see anything else. So I'll get this down on the floor again. Create some space on your floor. And I'd like you to come into a position on hands and knees. So this isn't the most functional exercise, but it gets the point across. Find a comfortable position between 2 round, 2 extended, somewhere in the middle. What I'd like you to do is straighten out your left leg and then lift it up. Notice 2 things when you lift it up. One is, where does the weight go in your hands? As you lift your left leg, does it go more to the left hand or the right hand? And then as you lift that left leg, can you do so from the hip without arching your back and changing the alignment of your spine? So what you should notice is the weight goes to the left hand and therefore in a diagonal towards the right knee because the left leg's off the ground. So try this now. Go back to that position where you're on the toes of your left leg, it's straight behind you, and I want you to lift it up, lower it down. This time, before you lift it up, I want you to push down with the left hand, anticipating that unload, pushing through the left hand and the right knee, and then lift it up, and then relax. Now go back to not exaggerating that preload and lift it up. You should feel it's a little bit easier to unload when you've pre-engaged your base of support. Take this one step further to a push-up position shoulder tap. I see people doing these like unloads where they're rotating their whole body as they lift one hand to tap their shoulder. All right? I don't know what exactly that's doing, but it's not training stability. Try it on yourself. Push, or don't push yet. Take your right hand and tap your left shoulder. And then take your left hand and tap your right shoulder. Now, do this with me. Push your left hand and your right foot down. Then lift your right hand, tap your left shoulder. Push your right hand and left foot down. Then lift your left hand and tap your right shoulder. And alternate that in reciprocation, feeling that as you preload the aspect of your base, it makes it easier to unload without your body having to shift and inefficiently transfer weight through the spine through a rotation side to side. All right? And I show this so that you see it's not just the feet, it's not just like using the legs or doing squats or that kind of thing, but a lot of times your arms are going to be your base of support. And your arms might even be just again, like a conduit to your base of support. So like, let's say your back's hurting or it feels like it's precarious or vulnerable and you need to pick something up off the floor. You could go down into that squat position that we were in here, shift your weight onto one of your legs, push that arm into that leg to kind of support that whole side and do what you need to do to pick up, and then come back to neutral and drive up from the legs. And you're going to have a lot less stress on your back doing it that way, using the arm and the leg as a good base of support, than if you just do something like bend over and pick it up like that. So again, it's all about maintaining your alignment and optimally using your base of support. We've got about 5 minutes left, and that's all I've got, I think. Let me double check. Yeah, that's all I've got for you. But I'm happy to hang around and answer questions that anyone has. If they want to look at any other specific applications of what we went through, that'd be great too. Just let me know. I'm going to unmute everyone, or I think I muted everyone. So give me a second here. So you can unmute yourself. I don't know how necessarily. I think you can all unmute yourself. But yeah, I'll hang around for the next 5 minutes. Type in a chat or unmute yourself, or if you can unmute yourself, let me know and I'll figure that out.
Yeah.
Anybody? All right. All right. Well, then we'll conclude there. Again, this will be, oh wait, here we got a chat. Cool. Thank you guys for joining. I'll put the screen up once more as far as you can email me. If you want the slides, would you email oc@ipa.physio? You can email me as well, but you get a quicker response if you email oc@ipa.physio. And then this recording will be up on our IPA Physio YouTube page if you want to go back and take a look at it. One other question here. All right, very good. You guys have a good evening. Again, happy Cinco de Mayo. I'm going to sign off here, and we'll hope to see you soon. Bye.